The problem we realised very quickly that we were solving isn't just to make a nice bath that looks great, that's at a better price. It's actually that people don't know how to use cold water therapy. It's like, say you were using it for mental health or muscle recovery, you'd use it in a totally different way. But most people don't know that, and you just see people on Instagram like hacking into frozen over lakes. If you've never done it before and you go and do that, you're probably going to have a terrible time. You're not going to want to do it again, and you're not going to unlock the benefits.
I am SEIF Hakim, serial entrepreneur and your success mentor, founder of the Alpha movement, and people call me the Alpha. And that's for a reason, of course. The Alpha Talks podcast crafts you and your business into an alpha, not for the faint-hearted. You had a decision to leave the corporate world, advertising, to pursue your passion. What challenge did you face?
Problem was not knowing how to scale it. And
Welcome back, Alphas, to a new episode of the Alpha Talks podcast. Today, I have a very special guest joining us, a true trailblazer in the world of wellness and entrepreneurship. She's a visionary founder and the CEO of Monk, the first at-home ice bath and cold water therapy app, empowering individuals to take control of their mental, physical, and emotional health. She's also the host of Submerge podcast. She built and exited 2 businesses from scratch, and she left her job in the world of advertising to pursue her love of fitness and nutrition. Please give a warm welcome to the remarkable Laura. How are you, Laura?
I'm
Good
very
to have
well,
you today.
thank you. Likewise, thanks so much for having me.
Same here. We're very happy, and I believe all the people listening to us and watching us will be very inspired with this kind of show or interview with you. Thank you very much. But before we start, let's say somebody, when we publish the episode, somebody will look at the thumbnail, will see the title, will see you, and they think it's an interesting episode. Why do you think they should give us their time today to watch the episode?
Cool. I assume we're going to go through all kinds of tidbits about being a female founder, anything health tech, software, hardware related. Hopefully share a few of the bad experiences as well as the good, because I love to be very honest about entrepreneurial journeys.
True. We're all looking forward to that. So let's start a little bit from the early time. You had a decision to leave the corporate world, leave advertising, to pursue your passion. What challenge did you face?
Gosh, yeah. So at the time I was working in advertising and I had a really great job. I loved it. It was very creative and really lent into some of my strengths, but I just always had this itch and I just could not stop thinking about starting my business. And I'd had this idea, and I always think it's interesting because you hear a lot of entrepreneurs saying they could never work for anyone else. But for me, it was very different. I think I'm naturally quite a collaborative person. I think as long as I really believed in the vision and the leadership, I could definitely work in another team, but I just couldn't stop thinking about this business. And I had to do it. But I think it's quite interesting because from my experience in advertising, that's definitely influenced my entrepreneurial journey. I've always lent into very much, consumer focused, like brand led businesses.
We come from the same background. Before I also jumped on the entrepreneurial journey, I was the CMO of Samsung. So I was totally corporate, totally marketing, totally advertising, and also to switch. But tell me, what was the challenge you faced in the beginning to take this step forward?
I think it was having absolutely no idea what to do. Like I didn't have a degree or a background in, business or finance, and I had no clue as to how to run a business. It really was sink or swim. And it was, the biggest and the greatest learning curve I've ever gone on. I think nothing beats hands-on experience. But I guess if I had to boil it down to my biggest challenge, it would be probably not knowing how to scale it. Like with my first business, I proved on a small scale product market fit, but yeah, I had no idea how to turn it from an exhausting side hustle into a real profitable business.
We will talk about that because that's important for a lot of entrepreneurs. Once they start something, okay, they keep doing everything, and then suddenly I need to scale, but I have a capacity at the end of the day. So one of the things we will be talking about is dedication. But before we move that forward, you started 2 companies and you exited them. Can you tell me the challenges or the lessons learned from this path?
gosh, I mean, endless challenges and lessons.
I believe so. I believe so.
I think particularly with the first one, like I mentioned, the problem was not knowing how to scale it. And at the time, I didn't have a great network. I didn't have friends who were doing similar things. I didn't really know that many people. So I just didn't have the resource to lean on. And so trying to figure out how to progress it was the biggest challenge of all. And I think that also became possibly like the biggest lesson of my life, that your network and the people you surround yourself with is everything. And I think naturally through running both those companies, I built like a base of a good solid network. I mean, the first company I started was a health and fitness subscription box. So each month, I worked with 8 to 10 companies. So over a couple of years, I had, quite a good resource or network of people to kind of lean on. But I think in the last few years, I really put that on steroids. And not that I really meant to, but it just happened. I'm part of a couple of networking or like entrepreneur groups. And yeah, I think it's not being necessarily surrounded by people who are just making money, but just by people who are like curious, emotionally intelligent, interesting and driven. And I think that being around those people is just so inspiring and so contagious.
As we say, like your network is your net worth at the end of the day. Nobody can succeed on his own. So it's how to build a network to keep this network going and growing. It's extremely important for our success. Let's move a little bit to Monk. It's a very, I would say, innovative idea. Let's put it like it's extremely innovative. How did this idea come to you? And what did you do to make it happen? Because a lot of people have ideas. First of all, they don't know how to identify. You identified an opportunity, I would say, with Monk. And then second, you moved it to a reality.
So I guess it was really born out of my own frustration. So I've always been really into, health optimization and biohacking. My goal is just to feel amazing. And I do a lot of weird health things, but I had never tried cold water therapy. And one day I'd been invited to this breathwork and ice bath workshop, and I went along thinking this is going to be horrible because honestly, I've always hated being cold. So yeah, it just sounded like an awful idea. But I did it. And afterwards, I just had this sense of clarity and accomplishment. And yeah, I just felt amazing. And I don't know what your journey's been like, but the thing that I've struggled with as, I guess, an entrepreneur is just stress. I'm really fortunate. I've never really had, anxiety or depression, but stress is a real epidemic. And this practice kind of gave me freedom from it.
I use sports to get rid of stress. Absolutely correct. On the same wave. Absolutely.
And yeah, so naturally I wanted more of it. But the thing I found really quickly was that it's just so inaccessible, which sounds stupid because it's cold water, but it was so hard to do. And, there were a few ice baths on the market, but they were all like 10 to 15,000 pounds, which to me just seemed obscene. And I, bought so many bags of ice to put into my bath at home. I've used like frozen horse water troughs. I've done all sorts to try and get my fix. And it just got to the point where I was like, why is it so hard to do something so good for my health? And why does this not exist? And to be honest, at first, I just wanted to make an ice bath for myself. And then I had a few friends who were like, oh, I want one too. And so we kind of, I carried on. And I was actually looking at making my own DIY ice bath. So just using
really?
like a massive, like
solving
a chest
a problem
freezer.
you have, actually. Yeah.
Yeah.
True.
And then I came across this private Facebook group. And at the time, there were 6,000 people in it. And I checked the other day and there's now like 38,000 people all learning how to transform, chest freezers into DIY ice baths. And I just thought, if there's this many people willing to get electrocuted, surely there's something bigger here. And so that really was the catalyst behind Monk.
But a question, because maybe a lot of like our listeners don't know exactly what Monks is in a nutshell, but what the things that differentiates Monk in comparison to all the other players in the market?
So the problem we realized very quickly that we were solving isn't just to make an ice bath that looks great, that's at a better price. It's actually that people don't know how to use cold water therapy. It's like, say you were using it for mental health or muscle recovery, you'd use it in a totally different way. But most people don't know that. And you just see people on Instagram like hacking into frozen over lakes. And if you've never done it before and you go and do that, you're probably going to have a terrible time. You're not going to want to do it again, and then you're not going to unlock the benefits. So what we've done differently at Monk is we've created this really beautiful hardware and software. So it's a physical ice bath as well as the app that teaches people how to use it. So there'll be programs like tailored to you that bring in breath work and soundscapes and guided audio that
So
make
it's
it
really different. It's really different. If
Yeah.
I'm using it for muscle recovery, it's different than if I'm using it to pump my immunity for mental health. It's really different settings.
correct.
That's pretty interesting.
So yeah, I guess we identified that as being the real problem. And yeah, that's what our product solves.
It's super. I hope. Can I be one of the first buyers?
Yes.
Is it already in the market or not?
No,
When
not
it's
yet.
expected?
Not yet. Later this year, the first batch
Later
are going out. Yeah, they've already been pre-sold, and then we go
Yeah.
into full production in January.
Yeah, I would love to be one of the first buyers. I would love to. Okay. In Monk, you're acting as a CEO. What is leadership for you and how you handle leadership with your team at Monk?
I think my leadership principles are deeply intertwined with our core values. I guess ultimately it's purpose-driven leadership. You know, our mission to be the world leaders in cold water therapy has to be at the heart of everything we do. So every decision, no matter how big or small, has to align with that. And I think that in turn creates a sense of purpose and of meaning for the entire team. I think particularly when you're a founding CEO, not just, a CEO coming into an existing business, you are the vision. Like, before the company's even taken shape, like you need to be able to sell that into people, and not just your team, but also investors and customers and the press. So yeah, and I guess how that pans out day to day is intertwined with the core values. So whether that is, one of them is being solutions focused. So, every problem you have, you've got to have 3 solutions. You've got to be, honest, even when it's uncomfortable. And whenever we decide on the right path, you have to fully commit. Because obviously everyone has different opinions all the time. You're not going to agree with the final decision, but you just have to get on with it and buy into it.
True. When you were starting Monk, tell me what you were looking for when you were hiring your, I would say, leadership team or your team in general. What you were looking for?
Ooh, well, so this is quite an interesting one, because what I learned from the 2 previous companies, and also just consulting in some others, is just how important your team is. And I didn't have a co-founder, and I actually would have loved to have had one, but there just wasn't the right person. So I remember myself and Lee, who's now my chairman, he was an investor, like principal advisor. I remember us sitting down and trying to map out, like, okay, how are we going to have the structure and almost the support of a co-founder without actually having one? So I've actually got quite an interesting structure around me where a lot of the early investors are also advisors. So say, for example, Rich, who is an investor, he's also our fractional CFO. And we've got someone else who's actually became an investor after they joined as a fractional CTO. So yeah, and to be honest, it's worked so well. Like
They bought
means
in the
that-
vision.
Yeah, totally. And also they're super smart. And obviously, from day one, you're not going to be able to afford the absolute top talent full time. So it's been a really interesting mix.
What will be, okay, maybe it's an early question, but what's the future plans for Monk? A vision, yeah, maybe it's an early one, but what's your vision?
So, well, the vision is to be the world leaders in cold water therapy. So I want Monk to be, a £1 billion company. I want us to be phenomenally successful. And I think where we're going with cold water therapy is going to be similar with what happened with meditation and mindfulness. Like in the early days, the founder of Calm? Yeah, he couldn't raise. He was struggling to fundraise because everyone thought meditation was this weird thing reserved for hippies. And I think we're going to see the same with cold water therapy. I think in a couple of years, it's going to become so normal. Like rather than people having a cup of coffee, they'll be having a nice bath. And rather than all the bankers going and, having a couple of pints at lunch or after work to wind down, they'll be hopping in a Monk.
But a question, does it need that everybody do it every day or not? It's an everyday ritual or not?
No, it depends on so many things. It depends, like, your goals, why you're doing it. Because, for example, if it was after muscle recovery or pre-cooling because you're an endurance athlete, you'd use it different when you're training to when you're competing. And as a female as well, you wouldn't use it consistently throughout the month. Like you would, like during a menstrual phase, for example, you don't really want to be doing cold water therapy. So there's so many like personal factors that come into it. And that's something we're looking to deliver through the app as well.
Perfect. So the app handles this for the end user 100%.
Yeah.
Depends on the goal. Very nice. Okay, let's a little bit switch to entrepreneurship. And in entrepreneurship, failures are common. A lot of people get afraid of failures, but failures are common. Can you share with us an instant that you failed and how did you overcome this?
Yeah. God, I mean, we fail all the time. I'd say
Exactly.
half of the time you're failing. And in a way, the quicker you fail, the quicker you are to success. I mean, yeah, we have setbacks and failures the whole time. For example, just last week, we pre-sold the first batch of Monk, which we hoped would be going out at the end of this month, but there's going to be a 3-month delay, which is obviously gutting. And like the only thing I want to do is get to market super, super quickly. But, you've got to do things and make changes for the right reasons. And as long as you're doing it in integrity with the long-term vision in mind, you're doing it, for the right reason. Obviously, there's part of it where, it sucks. I have to say to customers like, oh, sorry, it's going to be a 3-month delay. Like no one wants that. It's frustrating and it's upsetting. But, look at Tesla and their Cybertruck. They've just started shipping after 2 years of delays. So, really what is 3 months now compared to, who's going to remember that in a few months' time?
But how do you manage failures? What kind of tips you can give for starting entrepreneurs? Again, everybody face failures. What kind of tips and strategies do you use?
I always like the saying, remove emotion and execute. So like using that, what I just said as an example, it would be so easy for me to get caught up emotionally and feel really bad. Like, I'm going to have to tell these customers, I don't want to do that. And I just wish we could get it out. But ultimately, it's the right decision. That's what it's going to take to get to market. So I think that helps me reframe things slightly. And also I think just having really smart people around the table, we make decisions collectively. And I think as long as you have the confidence, the assurance that you're doing it for the right reasons, you're always going to fail. But it's how you, I guess, roll with the punch and come back fighting.
Remove emotions from it is a very interesting thing that you said. I really love it because one of the things that hold us back is our emotions. If we can manage to, yes, we're humans, we can feel down, but how fast you can recover or you reduce your recovery time, that sets us apart. Absolutely. We talked in the beginning about scaling and growing. And I do believe that to be able to scale and grow is your ability to delegate. So can you tell us a little bit about delegation and how do you delegate?
Do you know, that's really interesting because this is something that I'm very bad at and I'm trying to get better at. I think I fall into that.
It's not an easy thing. It's not an easy thing to delegate, honestly, because you started something that's your baby and you think that you're the best to do it in whatever circumstances. So delegation becomes very hard.
Yeah, it is that intrinsic kind of toxic founder belief that you think you can do it better. And sometimes it's not that I feel I can do it better, but I find it hard to break out of the doing and just rolling my sleeves up and executing rather than actually taking a step back and focusing more on the strategy and planning. So that's honestly something that I'm really working on. And also I think it's hard when you have a really small team. We've got a roadmap to hire, which we can start bringing people in soon, which is exciting. So there is always that difficult balance in the early days when you do have to get really stuck in.
Monk is playing in a very interesting area, an interesting field that requires a lot of trust and credibility because touch wellness and health and so on. How do you build this with your consumer base?
It almost comes back to my point about integrity. I think having really clear communication. I think one of the things we really wanted to do was make sure that everyone is so well informed and brought in on our journey with us. So say, for example, people that are in our database, we send really frequent emails telling them like what's happening with product development and what we're doing and why we're doing it. And I think when people understand, I think that's a big part. And also just the people that we've got around the table bring a lot of credibility. We've got some really well-known athletes and people involved with the business. And I think having those people that kind of are there to stand behind you and say like, I believe in this, does a lot as well.
100%. So like sharing the journey with your consumer base and having credible and trustworthy people in your team. That's 100% on point. I think this question will be very interesting for people who wants to start or like can be like working in corporate and they want to start the entrepreneurship journey. And everybody, when he has an idea, he's afraid to take the first steps, like what to do. Can you tell them from your point of view, how did you do this first step? Like, just like some people are fed up, so they had no option unless they take the step. But if people are kind of okay in the corporate world, but they have an idea and they're just, I can't take the first step. And I believe the first step is the hardest one to get all in and move ahead. So what can you tell us about this?
I would say find mentors and people doing similar things to you, ideally people who are further ahead than you, and learn from them. And it doesn't have to be some formal like mentor relationship. Bribe them with food, wine, whatever works, just to steal some of their time. Like that's how I started off. Yeah. And I wish I'd done that in the first 2 businesses. I really only started to do it really in Monk. And that has just been incredible. And I'd say read books, listen to podcasts, just immerse yourself in that world. Yeah. But do you think people struggle with the first step just because they don't know how to do it? Or do you think it is overwhelmed with just like the process of starting, not knowing?
I believe they're looking at the end result, and the end result is usually something big. So they're overwhelmed with what to do to reach this end result. So what I usually tell people, just break it down to small things. It's a small thing. There is no fear in trying a small, like I want to open, let's say, a social media agency. Just start with a website, put your portfolio online, and then. But like, okay, I want to high paying tickets clients. It's like 1 year down the line. Let's put it this way. Why you're thinking about it right now? So I believe it's the overwhelm. They're afraid. So just, I would say to people, shut down your brains for a couple of seconds and take the step. And that will be taking away the emotions from it.
I think I always have quite a logical approach to things like that, because I would write down all the things that I need to do or I can think of doing and then try and just map out which to focus on first.
A very interesting way. Absolutely. True. I love that as well. Okay, let's move to a very interesting one. I've been waiting to ask this question. Tech. Tech is a male-dominated industry, and you decided to do something in the tech industry. So can you tell me, like, did you face any challenges and how did you overcome it?
Oh my gosh, yes, absolutely. I've experienced challenges. And I think maybe not even so much being in tech, but just female in business. Yeah. I mean, most recently I've been fundraising. So we're raising a £2 million seed. And I guess I'll tell you how I've personally noticed it, but I guess just to set the scene, like we know the statistics, right? It's less than 2% of VC funding goes to female-led businesses, which is crazy. But I think it's probably important to note that we wouldn't want that to be 50% because 50% of businesses aren't female founded. So, we don't want to over-index, but what we're aiming for is equality, right? But I thought one thing that was really interesting was there was a study that looked at the types of questions asked, and to females, they would say things like, how are you going to protect your market share? Whereas to males, they would say, how will you double your market share? So it's a very subtle difference, but to women, it's like a protection question, yeah. And to a guy, it's like a promotion question.
And it's interesting.
But then where it gets even more interesting is it didn't matter whether the VCs themselves were male or female, they still ask the same questions. So it's not like this is males are awful thing. It's a societal issue. But I guess how I've experienced it recently was, it's actually happened more than once, unfortunately, but it's when a potential male investor has been more interested in my dating life than actually investing in my business. And I mean, it's just infuriating. It's such a waste of my time, completely undermines my abilities as a leader. And it's also humiliating. Like at the moment I have weekly calls with my board, and to turn around and say like, oh yeah, that guy we thought was going to invest? Yeah, he just wanted a date. Like it's not fun.
But it's an interesting journey, actually. It's a very interesting, because nobody sees this side at all. And we think, okay, we're seeking investments, everything is fine. No, like female oriented, or like, because since this is a male dominated, I would say, like area, so females face a lot of challenges. And you told us couple, like I love the tonality in the thing. I love like, okay, how you protect your market share versus how you grow your market share. That's a very interesting one. And the dating part is also amazing.
Yeah, but I think also just being a female CEO is interesting because, to your point, it's a very much like a male-dominated area. And also traditionally, it's a very masculine role. And I think people think as a female CEO, you've either got to be a ball breaker or you're weak. Whereas actually, like for me, being a female CEO, it's not about fitting into like a predominantly masculine mold. It's about harnessing that full spectrum of masculine and feminine energies or qualities and, leaning into one or the other when needed. And I think both bring really distinct advantages. Typically the feminine side emphasizes collaboration, intuition, and empathy, whereas male side drives more like assertiveness and risk-taking and logical decision-making. But you can still be assertive and lead with empathy. So yeah, I was speaking to someone the other day, and they place like C-suite execs in large corporations, and they were saying naturally they typically place males there, but the thing that he noticed was that they place the men there, and then these companies are spending sometimes hundreds of thousands to teach them things like collaboration and empathy.
EQ and empathy, true.
So his point was, in short, they hire males and then train them to be like females,
true,
which I
true,
thought
100%.
was quite funny.
100%. Love this story. Yeah, 100%. We talked about investments, like raising investments, the initial investments. What kind of advice do you have to entrepreneurs that are seeking to raise investments? Initially, the initial investment.
Yeah, what is in like the very first round? I think the thing that worked really well for me, or was probably actually my savior, was my mentor and chairman Lee, who I mentioned. I mean, at the time it was like a non-formal kind of advisory, and he also said he was going to invest, but that's his background. And I had no idea how to pitch. I'd never been exposed to fundraising. I had no idea what the process was or how you actually even like what a deck looked like. And the thing that paid off most again was it just came back to network. And it was finding, say Lee has like a phenomenal network, so actually he brought in a lot of his friends. But once you find one investor, then likely they'll want to introduce you to their friends. So I think it's just prioritize your network and go out to them. And just, I think there's the saying, ask for advice, you get investment, ask for investment, you get advice. So yeah, so actually approaching people and asking for advice is a great way to start.
A question. There are a lot of people that they have opinions with regards to bootstrapping or finding VCs, which to start. What's your opinion on that?
So my first two businesses were bootstrapped, but then Monk, there was just no way I could bootstrap it, like building hardware and software up front. Yeah. So it wasn't an option for us to bootstrap it. Well, I mean, I guess we could have done, but it would probably be 10 years before we actually get to market. So, yeah.
So it depends on the business. 100%. That's what I tell people. There is no right or wrong answer. It depends on what business you're in. Bootstrapping a tech idea, it's impossible. Let's put it in that way. We talked about networking. Can you tell how networking is important to your success? And what kind of advice do you give people on how to network? Because a lot of people, I believe, do networking in a very wrong way. In an absolute, I network with this person, like Laura, can you help me with this right away? It doesn't go this way. It's a give and take. It's building the relationship. Can you tell us about networking from your point of view?
Yeah, so I think a couple of the best things I've done was to join a couple of founders, like entrepreneur groups. There's one like based in London, and there's another one called Baby Bathwater. And both of them have been phenomenal because you're surrounded with an amazing mix of people that are just wanting to help each other. And the one in the Baby Bathwater one, they have a flagship event each year where it's a private island in Croatia. There's just 200 entrepreneurs that are there for 5 days. And as much as it's not networking, loads of stuff comes out the back of it, but you're just there to party, and there's amazing content. And I think it's when you're a founder or an entrepreneur, it's such a unique position that you're in. So to be surrounded by other people that just get it is phenomenal. But I guess yeah, it's interesting you say how to network, because although I call it networking, it doesn't really feel like you're networking, like there for a reason. But what's your take on it?
It's, I believe number one, in order for a person to be successful, you need to be among the right people. And when people position networking, it's not like it's like an objective to network. It's just a word to say be within the right circle, or surrounded by right-minded people, the people who share the same, I would say, philosophies, values in your same industry. Of course, I see a lot of people like right away dealing with networking in a very, I would say, wrong way, which is hello, SEIF, how are you? Can you help me with this and that? You can't start this way. That's I would say, it's a rough one. So network is like, as you said, like joining a group, going for an event with people, getting to know the right people. And by helping each other down the line, it's a mutual beneficial relationship. That's for me, networking in a nutshell. But not just like I'm networking, I'm talking to Laura right now, she will give me something. Whatever the something is, it's an advice, it's an investment, that's not my primary objective. My primary objective is to build, I would say, a mid to long-term relation with that person. And at the end of the day, it will be mutually beneficial.
That resonates a lot. And actually, one thing that I think is like a golden rule is if you meet someone, you say you're going to introduce them to someone or do something for them, absolutely just follow up on it. There's nothing worse than people like, yeah, I'll introduce you to this person, and then you just don't hear anything again. So I think also just building that, I guess it's like credibility and just knowing that people can rely on you. Like, yeah, I think that's 101.
100%. Your business, or you as a person, you're passionate about the well-being, the mental health, the wellness, so on and so forth. How do you manage this with being a role of a CEO? So running a company, wanting to scale the company, you have an amazing goal being the number one. That's a lot of work, and a lot against the mental health, well-being, in a very traditional way, but like it's totally opposite. How do you manage?
I have to build it into my schedule and do not let that slip. I have to try and flip it on its head and make either, whether it's whatever it is, like working out, rest, make that a priority. And the irony is that, I got into this business because I'm, super passionate about mental, physical, and emotional health. And typically when you get really busy, that's the first thing that drops. But I'm trying to be really strict with myself about making sure that happens. And actually, I had this reinforced or reframed recently in a really interesting way. So my product officer, we're having a conversation. He said something about the greatest chance of Monk doing really well, and consequently, him doing really well from it. It ultimately comes down to me. And that really made me think like, wow, okay, like I owe it to not just to the team, but to my investors. Like it really does come down to me to make it work. Not that I need more like motivation or fire in my belly, but it just reframed that actually, I need to prioritize myself. Like if working out or taking time off or having an IV drip is going to give me that extra mental clarity or happiness, whatever it is, like, I have to do that. And I then noticed it the other morning. I was thinking, shall I do some breath work in front of my red light, or I'll just go to work? And then I was like, no, I need to do this.
True. It will help me at work. True.
Yeah.
So it's a matter of prioritization, 100%. Totally agree. I would say not the last question, one before. If you want to like give an advice or a key message to the people listening to us from today's interview, what will be your key message?
I would say try cold water therapy.
Absolutely.
But not in a way that I'm just trying to plug Monk, but I think there's a reason that, high performers and entrepreneurs love it so much. And it is because it just gives you that, it helps you make decisions from a point of clarity, and it sharpens your minds. I think more than anything, it builds resilience and stress tolerance. Like, I was saying at the beginning, the thing that I've not struggled with, but I try to manage well is stress. And, cold water therapy, it's a cold stressor. It's like a hormetic stressor. So, but it also has this thing called cross adaptation, where it then helps you deal with other stresses in life. And so if something can help you just put things into perspective, it doesn't really matter what problems come at you that day in business, work, life, relationships. you just feel better equipped to handle them. And I think that's just so important for anyone on their business journey.
True. Do you ship internationally or not?
We will do, yeah.
We will do in the next phase.
Yeah.
So I'll be lining up.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, I'll be lining up.
You're next in line.
Yeah. Before I end, I want to ask you a question now. That's the product of Monk is actually, again, it's a unique product. How do you market it? What kind of channels do you use to market Monk?
So do you know what? We haven't really actively been marketing it yet. And we've been so fortunate. We've been in, the Financial Times, GQ, Vogue, The Telegraph, and we've had so much publicity, which is phenomenal. But I think that also, just shows how timely it is, just having a product that obviously looks beautiful, but is just at the forefront of this, what is becoming this mainstream movement.
When I saw the product, like iPhones it was not the first smartphone in the market. So there were smartphones before. But they created a design that is so sleek and looks very beautiful that it gave it an edge in the market. When I saw Monk, I felt exactly the same. Like I saw a lot of water bath things as equipment products. I would say they're ugly. You understand? Like it's something that you want to put at home, but hide it.
Yes.
Monk, absolutely not. It's a very beautiful, sleek. The design is amazing. You took care of every single detail. So I believe that you put a lot of effort in the product design itself.
Thank you. Yeah. I mean, it was so important to us that, if you're spending a lot of money on a product, you don't want something to your point, where you just want to hide it. Like you want it to look beautiful. You want it to be able to have it in your home or in your garden and also fit into, premium gyms and hotels and things like that. So yeah, the design of it was really important.
Very well done on that. Before we end, I have a ritual in the Alpha Talks. The ritual is we have a book called the Alpha Talks Memoir. That's the book. And the Alpha guests we have to do 3 things. You're not going to be able to write it like physically here. We'll be communicating through email that you can write me these things. I would appreciate it very much because I'm keeping, I would say like it's an archive of a lot of things. But the 3 things are, number 1 is that you told me you write about the experience you had with the Alpha Talks. Number 2 is who's the next guest you want us to have on the show to inspire and impact people. I would love that as well from your side. And the 3rd one is to write a question to the next guest. But the thing is, the next guest will not know who's writing the question, but it's a way of communicating, the alphas communicating together. So these are with the 3 things I'll be asking from you. I would really appreciate when we communicate over email that you send me these 3 things, and I will print them and put them in the memoir.
Amazing.
But now I will tell you the question from the Alpha I had guest. So the question was, if you would change one thing in your life, what would be that?
Oh, wow. Oh, gosh.
By the way, I didn't see it before, so I'm also... I'm just looking at it the first time now.
The first thing that comes to my mind is about, I hate to call it the work-life balance. And, to your point, we've just talked about how important it is to do what you need for your mental, physical and emotional health. But I feel like I definitely need to have more time doing some fun things. Like, for example, I've just started jiu-jitsu, which is awesome. I love it because when you're doing it, you can't think of anything else.
Yeah, exactly.
But I just need a bit more of that in my life.
The interesting thing that when people, it's about social media again and what it portrays to people, that when they see that or they hear that everybody, like this person is an entrepreneur, they think that the life is full of fun. That's not reality. Actually, the life is about grinding, getting things done, turning the idea into reality, a lot of challenges. Yes, there is 5-10% fun, but the 90% is close to hell, I would say. Close to us. So I love the idea of jiu-jitsu, actually.
Yeah, it's amazing. And you know what you say is so true. Like, for example, a couple of weeks ago, I went to the Belgian Grand Prix, which is so much fun, but it was very much for work. I went with some investors, meeting some potential investors. The whole time there, you're probably grafting and working. And what people don't see is you then going back to your hotel room and doing like 8 hours of work in an hour.
So yeah, true, 100%. And it's more, you know, it's if you put it in a correct perspective, I think it's a work-life not balance, but it's more about integration. You get a little bit of fun in these kind of events, okay, but it's trying to get the fun while doing the work. So it's not like the flowery, the greeny thing that everybody sees. Absolutely not. Yes, we have a pleasure. We love what we're doing again. It's not like we don't love, but it's not like we're partying all night. We're on vacation every weekend. It's not this way at all. It's the other way around. Laura, thank you very much. It was really a pleasure having you today. And I really hope that you enjoyed it as much as I, and absolutely positive that the audience did as well.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
That wraps another inspiring episode of today's show. I hope that this episode has ignited your inner alpha and left you feeling inspired, motivated, and ready to conquer any challenge that comes your way. Remember, alphas aren't born, they're made. It isn't about dominating others, it's about embracing your authenticity, leading with integrity, and making a positive impact on the world. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to subscribe to the Alpha Talks on your favorite podcast platform. Leave us a review and share the podcast with your fellow alphas. Also connect with us on social media at SEIF Hakim. Share your thoughts, insight, and stories of personal and business growth with us. Let's create a movement of alphas supporting one another. The world needs more alphas like you exactly. Until next time, stay bold, stay driven, and stay alpha.